Explained by the Billy Meier contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Extraterrestrials, Giza intelligences, the Bafath. Note: this group of extraterrestrials is singled out here due to their long history of causing trouble for humanity on Earth. See also Ashtar, Shiran, see also Fatima apparitions. Miracle of the Sun, see also Heaven's Gate cult, see also Patty Hart kidnapping, see also Lourdes apparitions. See also Men in Black, see also Moses, see also Reinhold O. Schmidt, see also Sodom and Gomorrah, see also Thule Society, see also UFOs, flying saucers. Asket's acquaintanceship.
Suddenly Asket grasped me by the hand and led me to a small entrance, opening to the pyramid. Through long, musty passageways, we walked in twilight through the interior of the pyramid. Then it was so dark that I could not recognize anything more. I wondered about the fact that I did not collide with anything, and that Asket found the way in spite of this literally Egyptian darkness. Translator's note: this German idiom Egyptian darkness corresponds to pitch dark in English. We walked in that manner for a long time, and I felt that we climbed down somewhere on various occasions. Then suddenly a very weak light was discernible, precisely as if the first light of dawn entered. Yet I was not able to fathom the source of this twilight. Now we stood before an enormous, squared stone, somewhere deep in the pyramid. Right before my eyes, suddenly the gigantic ashlar simply dissolved into nothing. And already Asket pulled me over the position where, just a few seconds before, the giant ashlar had been completely joined with other squared stones. A steeply descending passageway, which was guarded by two oddly clothed men, opened behind the ashlar, which had just now vanished. And as I threw back a glance as I walked down the passageway, I could not help but ascertain that the squared stone, which had just disappeared, was again precisely as visible and completely joined as just shortly before, when I saw it for the first time from the other side. As I made this assessment, Asket's voice whispered in my consciousness that I should be mute and not try to speak because we were in a place which was not constructed by her race, and it additionally would not be even slightly useful if we were to be identified here and uncovered by the guards. The guards we saw are members of, or are related to, a power-conscious extraterrestrial group who, through certain impure means, force a majority of Earth humanity under their control in order to bring the entire Earth under their control. So then I became silent and mutely followed my leader past the two guards, who took no initiative at all against us. Quite obviously they could not see us, and it seemed to me as if, for the two of them, Asket and I simply did not exist. The passage, which was furnished throughout with steps, led steeply and deeply down into the pyramid. Deeper and deeper it went down, and then, suddenly, we stood in a gigantic hall, which seemed to overflow with light coming from everywhere and nowhere. The hall was giant-sized, as was the gigantic disc-shaped spaceship which rested here next to various smaller ships in the middle of this hall, deep below the surface of the Earth. A giant spaceship deep below the foundation walls of the Pyramid of Giza. Here, resting deep below the Pyramid of Giza, was actually a discus-shaped spaceship of approximately 300 meters in diameter. A ship similar to the one I already had seen once on June 2, 1942. And this ship here must indeed already have been in this giant storage hall for centuries or even for millennia, very deep under the Earth and, by my reckoning, at least 3,000 or 4,000 meters below, or to the side and downward, from the Pyramid of Giza. Asket did not allow me very much time to sink into astonished contemplation of this ship, because she already pulled me by the hand further to a small plateau on which I had already, from a distance, been able to see some sort of still unidentifiable things. Yet with what this dealt did not stay a secret to me for long, because, as I arrived at this small plateau with Asket, I was not spared astonishment. I required minutes in order for me to finally become conscious of the complete facts. On the small plateau lay an ancient, large, and very heavy wooden Y-shaped cross. There were 3 rusty things right next to it, which, indeed, hundreds or thousands of years ago, must have once been hand-forged nails. Or was the brownish-black coating on the nails not rust at all? Was it perhaps blood? Was it perhaps blood like the brownish-black coating on 3 different positions on the wooden cross? It must indeed have been so, because right next to these things lay an ancient wreath, wound around many times with abnormally big thorns, on which this red-brown coating was likewise recognizable. That this wreath of thorns was unmistakably constructed something like a crown could not be overlooked. Also the about 2-meter, blackish wooden rod and the purple-colored cape were not to be overlooked next to a small leather pouch out of which glass pearls or glass stones appeared to have rolled. It was unmistakable. Here I stood before Christ's, respectively Emmanuel's, crucifixion utensils. It simply had to have been so and nothing else. I was not even able to imagine another possibility. Here I stood before everything which was connected with the death of Emmanuel, alias Jesus Christ, and the glassy stones in the little leather pouch were not stones, rather certain precious stones, whose sense and purpose, however, I was not yet able to fathom. Ask its explanations, Part 1.
3rd February 1953. But Bafath spoke the truth, because even as with all other religions, the Christian religion is also only an evil and wrong enslaving, poor piece of work of earth humans, who, in their establishment of religions, found the wealth promised to them, and power over fellow men, and found that they would be addressed by a degenerated group of extraterrestrial intelligences if they would spread the erroneous religious teaching. I hereby speak of the extraterrestrial race, which here, since ancient times, wants to attain supremacy over the earth humanity and, accordingly, to always again unfold the glow and flame of the various religions and always new sects, because only through that may they obtain their goal. For thousands of years they deceived the earth human with religious miracles and visions of every kind in order to maintain and to yet further increase the religious delusion. Out of these grounds they have also created a mighty station under the pyramid of Giza in order to guide, from there, the religious delusional events of the earth. Self-evidently, they had to bring their great spaceship into security, so they constructed the underground hangar where their ship has already been stored for thousands of years. They direct and lead everything from under there that serves the purposes of religion and serves the religious and sectarian enslavement of the earth human. And, in order to top it all off, they made the utensils some decades ago, which you have seen there. They are as false and inane as the attitude of this spacefaring group itself, because the true utensils of Emmanuel, and also the cross, are already long rotted away and decayed to dust. The imitation of the utensils succeeds as deceptively genuine, and this falsification would not be recognized even by an expert of your science with all the devices and apparatus available to him, because in those kinds of things this evil-minded group work with the most extreme precision and greatest ability. The life forms seen by you are the guards of the secret station, and they kill every life form which is ever lost in there. Their technical possibilities for the positioning of distorting radiations are, at any rate, very small. Subsequently, we can go in there, unconcerned, in invisible form. The meaning of the falsified Christ utensils lies in the intention that an earth human, in a very short time, will be influenced in a hallucinatory way by these malicious life forms, to such a degree that all that was seen by you can be transmitted to him as an entire experience. This earth human already stands under the influence of these malicious beings. Often he is transferred into a trance state by them, and then the images are transmitted to him. He thereby perceives and feels everything exactly as if he hears, sees, feels and experiences it in reality, although he only lies and sleeps somewhere, and everything is impressed into him as a dream. In the state of being awake, he will be just as much tricked as his friends and acquaintances by images of spaceships which indeed can be projected so true to reality that anyone can catch them on film. These appearances are, however, without exception, only nebulous and holographic pictures, which are not able to exhibit actual contours. The entire meaning lies therefore only in a malicious deception with the purposes that the concerned Earth human, who will be called Reinhold, Schmidt, talks about himself and spreads the images and experiences and so forth, implanted in him by means of holographs and dream state hallucinations, in order to maintain the religion of Christianity. Thereby such an Earth human will become an unconscious deceiver of himself and of all those who believe his explanations. Indeed, he does not know that he has never been in this pyramid with the spaceship and the counterfeit utensils, or that it has all only been implanted in him as reality through trickery, and that he has never flown in a spaceship. The list will be very long of those Earth humans who, already in the shortest period of time, will appear publicly to fraudulently and maliciously bring their fellow humans under their power by saying that they are in contact with beings of extraterrestrial origin. There will be many among them who will do this as a result of delusion or for religious and profit-driven reasons, while others will be partially steered by the malevolent life forms in the pyramid. In order to make these fraudulent assertions appear more believable, they will even go so far as letting it be spread that the extraterrestrial intelligences are very interested in the terrestrial Christian religion, and, in this regard, will very gladly be taught by the Earth human. The first weighty steps in this direction have already been undertaken in order to spread this new false teaching, and thereby to make the evil soil of religion, which is increasingly retreating into the background, more fertile again. Everything is intended to appear as if the extraterrestrial life forms, up to now, in a religious regard, have been misguided and are ignorant, and that now they will find the great salvation on the earth and will carry it out into space. It will be asserted that these extraterrestrial life forms will even be grateful to the Earth humans for this, because only through them will they recognize the Son of God, Jesus Christ, as Redeemer and Lord of the universe, and so forth. And to that end, towards the end of the millennium, even the Pope will extend the hand, at least in the form of the alleged universal validity of Christianity. This will already be so within a very short period of time, because the plans for these evil machinations are already being evaluated and converted into reality. However, the Earth human should protect himself from these machinations, because they only serve the purposes of enslavement by those who maintain their station in Giza. If the Earth human continues to work according to their wishes and demands, then they will, in the not too distant future, as in earlier times, appear officially in order to again bring Earth humanity under their rule through murder, tribunals, and barbarism. That will then be so if the Earth human continues to allow himself to be led astray by their religions, and brings himself so far that the evil life forms can again appear as angels and gods, as they have done in earlier times. But if they do not succeed in that, then in spite of that, further danger from them exists, because they are so malicious that, if need be, they will also try to reach their goal by barbaric violence and a great worldwide war. But if the Earth human continues to live attached to religions, then he thereby only serves the wishes and desires for power of those who have worked for a long time towards the conquest of Earth and thereby for world control. The Earth human must pay very precise attention to these things because, otherwise, a worldwide war of annihilation threatens him, which, as the Third World War, could bring the final defeat and enslavement over the Earth, directed and steered by the malicious extraterrestrial life forms under the pyramid of Giza. You will therefore attain the proof that which is known to you as the New Testament is exactly as much a malicious falsification as all the other religious books which exist on this world. These were not only maliciously falsified by Earth humans themselves, rather also often with the help of the malicious extraterrestrial life forms who steered many events of this kind from the Pyramid of Giza. Ask Its Explanations Part 2. 4th of February 1953 AS. For if a life form were to attain great knowledge and wisdom at too early a stage in its own development, then an inevitable and unstoppable catastrophe would be the effect and consequence, as it is threatening at present also on the Earth, because through the unconscionability of the malevolent extraterrestrial intelligences already mentioned several times, these imparted to some Earth's human beings, so-called scientists, a knowledge of which they were not yet able to cope, namely, the knowledge of the secret of the foundation stones of life, the atom, through which the atomic bomb could be created by revealing this secret. Once in possession of this dangerous weapon of destruction, it was only a short step to its use and a repetition of the earlier events in Sodom and Gomorrah. On the 6th of August 1945, the first of these deadly weapons was detonated, and 3 days later the second. If these human beings, the Earth humans, are to be helped, then this can only happen if they leave their ways of destruction and perdition and finally free themselves from the delusion of religions, the hunger for power and profit, etc., so that the dark enslaving powers no longer find a target. Do not, however, mentally look for great help from these groups and from such organizations, etc., for as they are all half blinded to the real truth by the scheming machinations of the evil-minded extraterrestrial group, they will give you only limited help, if any. The might of the Bafath beings, the aforementioned malevolent intelligences in the pyramid at Giza, coming from the distant Ring Nebula region, and descendants of the ancestors of Earth's humanity, is very great, and everywhere they know how to exert their influence. Thus they spare no intrigues and no infamous machinations, and use even the enlightenment efforts of Earth humans to achieve the aims of their madness and greed.
Contact Report 026.
So I start from the assumption that certain forms of life which are strange to you are trying to wander around from the vastness of the universe on our Earth and in the space of the world, and to influence other forms of life in various forms. On the other hand, I also suspect that one or more groups of descendants of your old race have not yet returned to you, and that they are still living according to the forms of a deity. Since they still have to live according to the old forms, it can practically only be that they influence many life forms, and also the Earth humans according to this, and appear as emissaries of a god.
With your speculations, you are very right, because there are other forms of life in the earthly space than just ours. There are also still some splinter groups of our own former races here, but also on other worlds where they still live according to their old forms. They constantly try to influence the life forms, especially the Earth humans, according to their forms. Already the ancestors had appeared as gods, and they still do. They are anxious not to release the Earth humans in particular from this form, and to continue to make them dependent on themselves through stoic references to religious heresies, etc., and to cast them under their spell. For a long time, they have been trying again to break into your world in order to subdue humanity on the Earth. The more religious the human being on the Earth is or becomes, the more this madness is given the opportunity of fulfillment. This would mean that humanity on the Earth could once again fall into evil religious confusion, and that bloody religious madness, such as the Inquisition, would once again rule your world. That is why they try to suppress the truth by religious delusion. But further it is added that said forms of life here and there, however rarely, actually make contact with terrestrial humans and deceive them by their religious influences. On the other hand, many Earth humans are subject to deceptions, caused by hallucinations or by certain unconscious workings and intended illusory projections of the extraterrestrial life forms for the purpose of underpinning their heresies. Great suggestive influences for deceptive purposes also belong to it, as do appearances of many other forms.
Contact Report 031.
Many claim that they are in connection, etc., with star people, otherworldly, and spiritual, and purely spiritual beings.
In reality, this is only the truth to the extent that these Earth humans are connected with other terrestrial life forms through the Earth humanity's collective subconscious, and are inspired or even misled, cheated and swindled by these, which are themselves still at very low levels, and which compared to the great mass of Earth humans are not, or are only in a few things, further developed in consciousness. In addition, however, there also appear low Earth human intelligences, who in their thirst for might would like to hold the scepter over their fellow Earth humans. And being aware of the earthly religious heresies, they try to take advantage of this, and thus, according to their lust for power, they influence the ones who have fallen into religions and sects.
What do you think about the influences of these low life forms and low essence forms on humans? If these actually intervene in the affairs of Earth humans, do they bring or have any benefit for the Earth humans?
They have this only partially, like everything that is evolving. Often behind these contacts lurk collective human subconscious forms, etc., but also a very great danger, which unfortunately the Earth humans will only be able to recognize after evil wars and catastrophes have befallen them. In many cases, powerful leaders on the Earth have also subconsciously been maliciously influenced by such collective human subconscious intelligences and, as desired, trigger death and destruction, ignorance, doom, deception, hatred and annihilation, this in political as well as in religious areas. However, individuals are also affected by these malicious collective subconscious powers. And as a consequence then, in delusion or delusional belief, they commit murders, suicides, and mass murders, and trigger catastrophes. These human beings who are influenced by such collective subconscious intelligences rescue. Collective subconscious powers belong, however, and without exception, to sectarian religious beliefs, which constitute the main breeding ground. These Earth humans will be approached through the collective subconscious forces in the form that they are transmitted, the delusion that God personally, or Christ or Satan, etc., has issued them the command for murder, war or suicide, etc. If the Earth human would finally get rid of his or her deadly sects and religions, then these misleading or malicious collective subconscious intelligences, that is to say collective subconscious powers, would lose their suggestive power over him or her, because where truth and logic and the compliance with the creational laws prevail, evil can no longer assert itself. But since these malicious human collective subconsciousness intelligences are aware of this, they very skillfully control and direct the lives of sects and religions. They even understand how to propagate the madness of religions and sects, and to push the Earth humans more and more to an evil religious sectarian fanaticism. In this connection, the infamous machinations of alleged contacts with extraterrestrials or high spirit forms, etc., are very popular with them. To the Earth humans who listen to these subconscious voices, they present themselves as envoys from God, guardians of peace, keepers of the universe, angels, on behalf of Jesus Christ, and as praise and salvation heralds, etc. As collective subconsciousness-based, inspirationally transmitted influences, these voices designate themselves as such, and claim repeatedly as well that they are some high-standing spirit forms, deceased or even pure spirit forms, etc. In utilization of their diverse capabilities, the collective subconsciousness voices are also able to create hallucinations and fantastic apparitions for the Earth humans, mostly on sectarian religious basis, such as saint figures, images of Christ, images of Mary, crosses, etc., which appear to the Earth human as miracles and entangle him or her deeper and more madly in the religions and sects. And that this is actually so, of it you could convince yourself when I led you to the crucifixion utensils in the depths of the Giza pyramid.
Secretly, however, malignant intelligences of masses addicted to world domination created their station on Earth and on a neighboring planet and upgraded the cultic religions. This was all done in secret and with the use of many evil means.
But what is it now about the Giza Heinies also taking human beings for flights?
I see, you are thinking of the world domination addicts. Well, in earthly terms, these life forms are enemies of Earth humans, but on the other hand, they are also enemies of us, whereby by us I again mean all intelligences of extraterrestrial origin. So they have nothing in common with us in terms of our tasks. Therefore, when I spoke earlier of only 3 Earth humans being taken on flights into outer space in this century, I was really speaking only of us, not of these malignant life forms. In order to achieve their devious aim, they have made contact with various Earth humans and have also taken them on very short flights into space, but only outside the Earth's atmosphere, and such occurrences are many more with them than with us. For our part, we are anxious only to take Earth humans out into free space, who, according to their evolution of consciousness and spirit, are capable of evaluating these flights. The malignant life forms, however, transport Earth humans who are absolutely incapable of consciousness into the near-Earth space in order to make them willing and to deceive them in order to be able to exploit them for their plans of world domination.
Aha. And how is it then with those who are fooled and misled by evil intelligences, who are fooled into believing apparitions of images and voices, such as the Giza fritters do, to consolidate their dark plans?
These human beings, too, must not be accused of deliberate deception and conscious fraud, for they, too, act in good faith. These persons are misled and deceived by the malignant intelligences. They are made to believe false facts and various false images and voices. But they are not able to analyze these because their spiritual and consciousness-based knowledge and ability are not yet capable of the power to find the truth. Therefore, these persons are not deceivers and not swindlers, but deceived and swindled who act in good faith. Like those who are guilty of self-deception, they can only be accused of not making a real effort to find the truth and of relying not on knowledge but only on a belief. In addition to these contactees, there are 723 Earth humans who are under the control of the Giza intelligences. But these we must not stamp as real contactees, for they are misguided and serve the evil plans of the world domination addicts. But several of these have already come out to the world public decades ago and spread reports and photos which have been made to appear to them by these evil intelligences. Some of these misguided people and those exploited for evil purposes have very well-known names, especially in ufological circles. Fortunately, there are not many of these contactees who have come to public attention so far. There are only 27 of them in the total number who have been pushed into the public limelight as misguided ones by the world domination-addicted intelligentsia.
Contact Report 033.
The object which appeared yesterday and the day before yesterday was the same that you had already photographed on the evening of the 20th of April. This, however, was not a beamship, as you assumed, but a small spaceship. It also did not belong to us, but to other and rather unfriendly intelligences. These strive very much to interfere with our work, and maybe even to destroy it. They have been particularly interested in you for months because they want to get you into their custody. The reason for this is the following. These intelligences are striving to bring the planet Earth and its humanity under their sovereignty. For this, they make use of very unfair means and do not even shy away from human abductions. They are one of those groups which operate with the earthly religions and which successfully profit from it, as unenlightened Earth humans get into connection with them and become religiously influenced. Misled by these intrigues, the deceived contact persons then work unconsciously for the evil purposes of these troublemakers, and step by step, they slowly bring them closer toward their goal. Namely, the goal means the domination of the Earth and of the Earth humans, which these intelligences have already been working towards for thousands of years. Unfortunately, the deceived ones often come out of their silence and spread the religion-induced misguidances that these ill-intentioned liars have given to them. And they achieve great success through this, as you already well enough know, because the Earth human is exceptionally strongly trapped in unreal religious paths.
That is known to me, but what does this have to do with these birds? To which group do they belong? Are they perhaps members of the pyramid moles?
If you mean the Giza intelligences, then I confirm it.
I almost came to that conclusion from your words, but what do these guys want from me then? You already told me that they were a danger to me.
They surely are a danger, and a very large one which you must not underestimate. They know the history of your life and your task very precisely. They know that you must enlighten humans as the prophet of the truth, and that you must bring back the true spiritual teaching. This represents an enormous danger for them, because through it, the modern age human will sooner or later abandon religion and will then seek the true religion in association with the religion, because they will, in other words, find and recognize the real truth. As a result, these evil intelligences would naturally be hindered in the execution of their domineering plans, and their very long-term enterprises would be put into question. Their previous mode of operation, to secretly work with the false religions, was and still is their only way to achieve their goal and to appear as gods and angels. They do not have another possibility, because they know very well that if they were to take dominion over the Earth and its inhabitants by force, the Earth folks would recognize the truth and rebel against it by all possible means and fight back. A war would become inevitable, but this is something that these intelligences could not afford because they number only a few thousand beings. Their technology is very outdated, and they must fear the terrestrial explosion weapons in every respect. Because of this, nowadays they would even be less able to involve themselves in a war with the Earth humans than they would have in previous times. Their only possibility is to drive humanity into the final madness of their religions, in order to appear as gods and angels and take over the dominion of the Earth for themselves as they once did, before they were displaced again. We have already been striving for a long time for a termination of the progress of these intelligences, and we are also capable of putting them in their place. For a few months now, they have been trying to abduct you, to stop you from promulgating the truth. With their appearance, they hope that you would let yourself be tempted to move to a convenient place for them, where they could kidnap and deport you. Therefore, be very alert, and do not let yourself be enticed into making unwise moves. We do monitor these evil wishers, however they are equal to us in certain things, and we have our hands full with them. Practice, therefore, the most extreme caution, because they truly do not shy away from any scheming.
Contact Report 034.
But you had in the past mentioned that humans are also kidnapped by aliens in the Bermuda Triangle.
Sure, but it is as rare as it is on all the rest of the Earth. For those abductions, mainly the Giza intelligences are predominant, together with time travelers and other elements of the universe. However, these incidents are truly very rare and count for less than 0.02% of all abduction cases on the Earth.
I am now still further interested in a matter related to the so-called appearances of saints. I mean those phenomena that are in a religious fashion dressed up in a holiness, like, for example, the alleged appearance of a so-called saint, after which the dear humans at the location of appearance are then creating places of pilgrimage out of it.
You know very well that these phenomena are only personally generated visions or machinations of those power groups and those Earth humans who want to cast their spell over the Earth humans through the religious forms of appearance, and in others are caused by Earth humans through their exuberant religious imagination. This means, on the one hand, that the evil-minded extraterrestrial Giza intelligences, who want to bring the Earth into their power, cause such phenomena by projections or play such a role themselves, and, on the other hand, that Earth humans afflicted by the religious delusion send out their horrendous fantasy by their consciousness-based powers and cause such phenomena by projection or visually semi-materially. And you also know very well that, as another example, the appearance of Fatima was nothing else but the evil play of the Giza intelligences, who let one of their ships appear in radiant light, and then one of their female life forms appeared as the Mother of God, although they made the mistake that the woman remained in her spacesuit, and this was registered by critical observers. I have told you several times that various groups are working to disrupt our work, and your work in particular. These are, without exception, associations, individuals, and groups that have fallen into untruth, partly by religion and partly influenced by the dark powers of those addicted to seeking power. You also know very well that every human is able to influence other human beings at unlimited distances in such a manner that they do exactly what they are commanded to do. My speech is related to the world domination addicts mentioned earlier. And I am talking about those of extraterrestrial origins who want to bring this world under their control, the Giza intelligences. They use not only mystically inclined and misguided Earthlings, but also other groups, mostly those that for some unclear and rather confused reason show anarchistic tendencies, such as the Red Army in Japan, the German Baader-Meinhof Group, the Red Army faction, and the American Symbionese Liberation Army. The latter group, the American, is to be inspired by the aforementioned malignant intelligences to commit an extraordinary crime.
Contact Report 035.
You shall once again interfere in earthly events and exercise your powers, for things are happening which are of decisive importance with regard to the standing of the reality of all extraterrestrial life forms. The world domination-addicted intelligences of Giza are preparing a very malicious crime to harm various other intelligences they dislike and question their credibility. In recent times, they have made great efforts to influence terrestrial humans in sectarian form in order to commit, in this form, an unusually malicious crime against human life, whereby the existence of extraterrestrials is to be made impossible and ridiculous, but whereby, on the other hand, their madness of religion for the purpose of their world domination addiction is to find new breeding ground for them. Here's the thing now. For some time now, a couple of Earthlings in particular have been under the evil influence of the Giza intelligences in order to initiate criminal and degrading things in their evil sense. The purpose of these machinations is to mislead Earthlings in larger masses with the lying instruction that the Earth will no longer be habitable in about a decade. According to this assertion of lies, the Earth humans would therefore die en masse, and everything would fall prey to death. However, it is not given that all terrestrial humans must die, why a rescue by extraterrestrials is intended. Willing persons would therefore be picked up by extraterrestrial intelligences by a spaceship and brought to another, better and more beautiful world, where they would have a free and better life. This has already been announced through billboards and other advertising. Also, a meeting serving this evil cause was already held last Sunday, 14th September, 1975. Declaration of 16th September 1975, to get hold of the willing. That is what happened in America in a place called Waldport. See Heaven's Gate cult.
But tell me, what about the Giza twerps? Ascot once told me something about how they wanted to influence a person to make him believe that he had been in the pyramid and had seen the crucifixion utensils there. She told me that in 1956. But I have never heard of such an incident before. Didn't the Giza fellows run this undertaking back then? If it were true, I should have heard something about it.
The deception maneuver has taken place, and the Giza intelligences have even succeeded very well. The deception took place with an American named Reinhold Schmidt, a grain buyer from California. But he was also misused for other things, so he was fooled into traveling to the Arctic with a spaceship and so on.
Contact Report 036.
Via the then leaders of the Thule Society and their clairvoyant Hanusen-Nafur, the Giza intelligences managed to take possession of the being of Adolf Hitler and to abuse him for their dark and malicious purposes, without him resisting it, because a delusional greed for power had flared up in him himself. In addition to this undertaking, innumerable forces in the form of human beings of Earth who had fallen prey to the Giza intelligences were regarding their consciousness manipulated and placed in his closest vicinity, whose influence he was also unable to withstand. Adolf Hitler had succumbed to a delusion of power and was also maliciously abused by the Giza intelligences, with the old Thule Society playing a not inconsiderable part in this, which, however, cannot be transferred to the society of the same name of the new form. A few days ago, through painstaking research and surveillance, we were able to gain a clear understanding of the fact that Ashtar Sharan actually exists and that the only reason we could not recognize him was because he fraudulently wrapped himself in this name. A part of his real name is Arosiak, along with another sequence of names, and he is a cousin of the Supreme Giza Intelligence. On their behalf, he controlled the old German Thule Society, in which he introduced two strong telepathic factors, but which also influenced many Thule Society members and various outside groups on a telenotic basis, including those who received the pseudo-messages of Ashtar Sharan. The events of Fatima actually trace back to these intelligences, as do many similar events. All we knew so far was that the Giza intelligences were responsible for all these events and that everything was done by Ashtar Sharan or by his command.
Contact Report 038.
Aruseak, alias Ashtar Sharan, and so forth, is, as far as the fulfillment of his apportioned mission is concerned, the leader of an assembly of intelligences consisting of thousands of individuals, who, until 15 years ago, stood under the direct command of the world control-seeking Kamagol. Aruseak and Kamagol are, according to their blood association, cousins, as it is named by you. But Kamagol is the leader and ruler over a splinter group of many thousands of descendants, who, in earlier times, were separated. which means that this group had been separated by those powers who, earlier, possessed the control over your Earth and whose highest leader was an Ishwish. As it has always been, however, power struggles and lust for power also ruled among them, as unfortunately is characteristic of the human life form in its course of evolution. One of the most greedy for might at that time was Arusum, who, with a group of many thousands, broke away from the majority of the celestial sons who had already become peaceful, and went his own way with the mind to make the earth and its life forms subordinate. His way of obtaining his goal was that of lies and deceit, of misleading and false teaching in the form of cultic false teachings, which he was able to very skillfully weave into the religious teachings. Through emissaries and Earth humans who had succumbed to him, he mixed these teachings among the Earth humans, whereby he soon won many followers of his false teachings. It was primarily the gypsies on the Nile, and in the further vicinity of the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea, who fanatically hung on his false teachings and began to spread them. But the Hebrews, as they were, later freed themselves from this rule, as Arusum had to cede control to his successor, who was then named Jehovah, and so forth, in the tongue of the Earth humans. Having grown in the number of their people, the Hebrews created their own might and elected themselves as chosen ones. They assumed for themselves the right to be qualified for world control and to be worthy as chosen people, although they were never a people, rather only a low human group of gypsies of all kinds of colors and races who had come together. But since the events of that time, they unjustifiably presented themselves as the first ones, as the pre-entitled to rule the earth, faithful to the examples who wanted to bring the whole earth into bondage. Thereby they became renegades, as also were their models, who now from their side had to seek new ways to realize their wishes for power. They found these ways then also through Kamagol I, who succeeded Jehovah, who had assumed the name of an Ishwish. Like no ruler before, Kamagol I forced all terrestrial religions into the frame of blood-demanding cults which, unfortunately, were able to be maintained on the earth up to the current time. In spite of many efforts of the righteous celestial sons, they were not able to prohibit his evil machinations. Therefore, he could grasp the cultic religions around himself more and more, and control the world. Mighty in many kinds of technical and consciousness-related resources and powers, Kamagol's assembly was able to force the Earth humans into its power and completely lead them into a cultic religion confusion. However, also Kamagol I could not assert his position of power because, after he had created for himself a center and a headquarters deep under the surface of the pyramids of Giza, he was overthrown and disempowered by his own son, Kamagol II. In many things he was even more malicious than his father, which he also soon proved through the introduction of monstrous mass killings of the Earth humans. Very many bloody events on the earth, which were carried out through the cultic religions, in truth, concern the will and the influencing of Kamagol II. He and his assembly have become known, in insider circles, as the Giza intelligences. This is because they maintain their actual command center there and guide all events from there. Many kinds of efforts were undertaken to prepare an end for this command center and the driving force of this malicious assembly, yet that has basically failed up until now, because they have secured everything so much that effective alterations could only be obtained with malicious illogical force, which is not allowed to us and all others who are oriented regarding these facts. Kamagol I now selected one of his cousins as the authority over a group of thousands of individuals which had a quite special mission to fulfill, or would have had. This task was essentially based on the telenotic guiding of various groups of humans of Aryan lineage into certain paths, in particular in Germany, America, Argentina, and Brazil, in order to provide unconscious assistance for Kamagol's plans. During the first time period, Arisayak, therefore Ashtar Sharan, and whatever his other names may yet be, followed these orders unconditionally, so thereby Kamagol allocated further great power. But in the course of time he obtained many kinds of understanding and modified his behavior. Until then, he acted only according to the orders of Kamagol, so he only modified his tactic unnoticeably, and thereby influenced, firstly, his assembly, which he indeed required. By and by he obtained their trust, and they acknowledged him as their actual leader. So it was an easy game for him to, by and by, include the obtained understanding of the truth and also to act according to it, even with the knowledge of his assembly. With their acquiescence, they loosened themselves from the control of Kamagol and formed a new splinter group. That happened in the Earth year 1933. Since then, Arisayak followed his mission, imposed on him by Kamagol to a degree, and transmitted his messages to various Earth humans using telepathic impulses.
Your explanation says, therefore, that Arisayak has broken away from the Giza intelligences and has made himself autonomous.
A real vision describes a certain form of a guided vision. It is a form of vision that is dominated by many intelligences, including the Giza intelligences. By these arbitrarily provocable and steerable visions, different extraterrestrials, and also we, influence life forms in order to obtain certain impressions for them in this way, which are instructive to them and which they are to make accessible by spreading also to others, in order to also purposefully affect the surroundings. These steerable visions are so massively realistic that the influenced life form becomes convinced that it has experienced the vision as reality. As you have been oriented by Quetzal, Arisayak has been pinning his hopes on the Giza intelligences, and therefore it is necessary to wait for further development first. Furthermore, we are informed about the names in books and writings of the Ventla publishers, as well as many other groups and individuals. But as contact persons, they are completely foreign to us, although we know from many of them that they partly belong to the Giza intelligences or grossly abuse any truth. The Ventla publishers are sectarian in nature and also publish false contact reports.
There will be an uproar, Sim Ya say, because Ventla Publishers has a lot of names,
Of which only a few belong to very few real contact persons.
Contact Report 039.
723 Earth humans are contact persons of the Giza intelligences. These, however, are not counted among the real contact persons. 27 of these 723 Giza contact persons have come to the public worldwide.
Contact Report 043.
The Giza intelligences, which unfortunately we are not always able to monitor very precisely with their dark machinations.
Contact Report 044.
But I do not want to exclude the possibility of explaining to you that the persons I have described as negative may have been in connection with the intelligences of Giza, or may still be in connection with them, because we do not exercise precise control over them.
Contact Report 051.
At 3 different locations, extremely small amplifier stations were set into trees at intervals of 230 meters each. These stations, with a size of just under 1 square centimeter, functioned and served as relay stations, which interference transmitted oscillations from a central transmitter in very intense and dangerous values. The central station floated in a constant position high in free space, but we could not clarify its origin. We only have probability calculations for this, but with only 47 values, they allow a very small evaluation.
I understand, but I am still thinking about a certain possibility.
We have also considered this possibility, and there are indeed several things that point to Giza.
Contact Report 054.
Would you rather tell me how many other alien races are actually still stationed on the Earth?
There are 7 more of them.
Are the Giza intelligences included in these 7 races?
They are not.
Contact Report 055.
But much more interesting would be the answer to the question whether Ganymede, the moon of Jupiter, is inhabited, and whether it is perhaps a spaceship.
Ganymede is a very metal-like small planet and not habitable. There are no people living there either, but there are a few alien human life forms that are stationed there for a short time. But it is not a spaceship.
But the life forms that are stationed there maintain the contacts with the Earth humans?
Sure, because they are the Giza intelligences.
But now something very special. Did you already hear that? Sigma Roma?
What is this question? How did you get this knowledge, and what are you doing with it?
You seem to be alarmed?
Are you surprised? What is the purpose of this question, and how do you know about this code, and what do you intend to do with it? Then why do you break the code and speak it backwards? More than that, my friend, because I know the Giza intelligences too well not to worry about you when you come to me with their code.
You are not saying that these 2 words are a code of these Giza twerps?
What do you think I am worried about you for?
Oh, you blue Heinrich, I did not know that. I received this Sigma Roma from Mr. Reyes. He explained to me that he had received this code through a telepathic contact from somewhere, and that I should tell you about it.
Is that really the case?
I am not lying to you.
I do not accept it, and I do not see anything like it, but the Giza intelligences have many possibilities. Well, the words of the code are offset, and I do not want to mention them in their correct composition, because they do not
hold a certain seductive value. I already figured it out myself. Right?
You think very quickly, but I must ask you to be silent about it.
Naturally.
It is the code of the intelligences of Giza, through which they make themselves mutually recognizable. This is important to them, for their various groups unlawfully call themselves descendants of various races and celestial systems to Earthlings. This is how they call themselves life forms from Mars and Venus, but they also use our pro forma homeworlds for fraudulent purposes. It is therefore safe to assume that Mr. Rise was connected to one of these intelligences and received the code from them because they assumed that we would represent one of their groups.
Fabulous. These twerps have their dirty fingers everywhere.
Contact Report 069.
Recently, I was told that one evening about 3 or 4 weeks ago, a triangular and radiant ship hung almost vertically high above our house for about 20 minutes. This was told to me by an innkeeper who wanted to have the object observed. It is interesting to note that exactly at this time in our house, different people began to rotate, and I finally ran away because everything became too much for me. I thought about it and came across all sorts of things. Do you have any idea what kind of ship it might have been? You know, it must have looked like a delta, with bright rays of light at the front and colorful play of light rays at the back.
You say delta-shaped? That can only have been Giza intelligences who let their influence play.
That is exactly what I was thinking and explaining to the others. I do not know any other ships of this kind.
Contact Report 070.
Jehavan ruled until about 3,660 Earth years ago, until he was likewise treacherously murdered by his only son Jahav, who then snatched up rule for himself after 340 years of his father's reign. Jahav ruled wickedly and always screamed for blood and revenge until 320 years ago in your chronology, during which time he sired 3 sons who were named Arisem, Ptah, and Salam. Megalomaniacal like his father Jehavan, he let himself be proclaimed as creator and celebrated as such, and like his father, he caused terrible devastation among the 3 human races, and he demanded blood and death. As addicted to power as his father Jahav was also his firstborn son Arusam, who constantly wanted to take over his father's power. Thus, he also finally murdered his father Jahav and wanted to snatch up the power for himself. But he failed profoundly, because his younger brother Ptah and his youngest brother Salam positioned themselves against him in order to expel and ban him into exile, because having become disgusted by the constant wars, power struggles, and bloodshed, Ptah and Salam already made an effort themselves for many decades to lead humane forms of life. Therefore, already for a long time, they assembled around themselves many like-minded ones, with whose help they gained control of Arusam and his 72,000 followers, and expelled them. But Arisem secretly returned to the earth and settled down with his army in the land of Egypt in the old cubicle constructions which had existed there unused for more than 70,000 years. Deep in the interior of the earth and deep below the pyramids, they established themselves securely, whereby they converted the rooms and buildings deep below the present pyramids of Giza as a center for their wicked purposes, from where they and their descendants since then tried to realize their tyrannical plans. But as of now, without noteworthy success, although their way of obtaining the goal of deceit, lying, and intrigues was through false teachings and the leading astray of the uncorrupted earth humans through religious teachings of madness and cults and many kinds of other evil machinations. Due to their expulsion, they, however, forfeited very much, because all possibilities for technological and otherwise scientific further development was prevented for them, as also, however, was all their research, and so forth, which thereby led to the quite rapid reduction in their life expectancy, and today still only amounts to an average of 94 years, which in relation to today's people converts to practically only about 20 years higher than the average in European regions. This means for the renegades, called the Giza intelligences by us, that they are slowly dying out, and today are still only fewer than 2,100 in number. Due to complete isolation from outer space, these remaining ones will also be no more in fewer than 3 decades, because they are all already old and no longer capable of procreation. But in spite of that, they still maliciously hold firm to their tyrannical plans, and they do not see themselves as beaten. Arusam ruled until about 3,010 years before your time reckoning began, 3010 BCE, until a powerful forced departure was secured for him by a mutineer by the name of Hen, who was called Jehovah in the tongue of the Hebraeans, and likewise also gradually within his own ranks, whereas the appellation, the Cruel One, was added. In the year 2080 BCE, already old and weak, he was displaced, and his nephew Kamagol I took over the evil command of the Giza intelligences in order to expand the headquarters below the surface of the Pyramid of Giza to a murderous center of power, which allowed no possibility at all of being destroyed anymore. Like no ruler before, Kamagol I forced all earthly religions under his control and created terrible cults which demanded human blood, which were able to be partially maintained until the present. All efforts from outside were in vain, as his position of power could not be broken. But also Kamagol I was only a human, so one day he met his own fate from out of his own ranks, in the form of his own son, Kamagol II, who overthrew him and deprived him of power and let him die miserably in a deep dungeon. Kamagol II was in many things even more malicious than his father, which he soon revealed after taking over power through the introduction of monstrous mass murdering of earth-born terrestrial human beings, who he slapped under his religious power through many kinds of means. As one of the last really extremely long-lived, Kamagol II attained a great age and died a natural death just a few days ago, which we were able to ascertain just 2 days ago. He departed this world on the 27th of December 1976, therefore around 10 days ago. The still remaining Giza intelligences, already old and weak in many cases, but still filled with hate and tyrannical plans, do not give up. But indeed their days are numbered, so in 3 decades at the latest they will be no more.
However, what is the name of the new superior twerp among the Giza wretches?
According to our information, no new ruler will emerge. In future, all decisions are to be taken by joint council.
Contact Report 076 Manara. The main thing is that the intelligences of Giza have made themselves noticeable again and are trying by all means to disrupt the construction of the center. But not only that, because they try to destroy everything in all possible ways, because in their evilness they fear and have to fear the truth. This is also the reason why all sorts of evil has befallen you in recent times, and that you have had various accidents and other nuisances. Some of your group were and are particularly at risk, which is why Simyase warned you some time ago, at night, when you could prepare the persons concerned to exercise special caution. These are all the persons in the group who are particularly sensitive to the forces of the negatively controlled Giza intelligences, who have agreed in alliance with the Brazilian group to use even malicious means to destroy the center. Be careful, therefore, for you may be threatened by danger in a material form even from Brazil. The consciousness-based influences of the intelligences of Giza should not be taken lightly either, as you are used to saying, because they are particularly dangerous. Contact Report 079.
What about these negative influences that have had such a strong effect on all of us?
In the main, the Giza intelligences were guilty for the negative events. Realizing that your center lies very exactly on a magnetic radiation center, they were tempted to exploit this in their favor and bring forces into play that you could not cope with. As you yourself know very well, you too had all sorts of trouble and misery in order to cope with, or at the very least to reject, all kinds of hostilities. Even when it is a mystery to us how you could do that, this fact nevertheless remains.
At times it was also very crazy for us. Many simply cranked through, spun out, and went crazy. This affected the work and much more. Nevertheless, I do not want to ascribe all events to the Giza twerps and the swinging waves of the stars, because in many cases the spinning out of the individual was because they did not know what to do with all the work that had to be done, within which was the factor that they were unaccustomed to this kind of work, which also helped with everything.
Contact Report 080.
What is certain so far is that the Giza intelligences have joined forces with a group of fleeing and malignant intelligences from space, see next entry, who are involved in the concerns of the Giza intelligences and are helpful to them. Their outer forms correspond to your observation that they have oversized eyes and some other special things about them.
Contact Report 081.
Certain events of the recent past can even be traced back to this, because through the unreasonableness of a certain member, Margaret Flammer, who, despite repeated warnings, continues to indulge herself with new spiritualistic sessions, negative swinging waves were able to spread from the medium in question, registered by a brain analyzer of the Giza intelligences that found a weak spot and consequently created that artificial insect, with the help of a malignant refugee group from a space-time displaced area of the Pegasus constellation guilty of bacterial contamination in the center.
The evil occurrence with the collapse of the wall could have been avoided if the reports had been followed. Sim Ya-se had long pointed out that the center was to be secured and guarded. However, this advice was not followed, which is why it was possible to push down the wall. It is a work by the Giza intelligences in collaboration with the refugees from the Pegasus area. They were located by and brought to the attention of the group in Brazil about 6 weeks ago, after which a connection was established between them. The merger with the Giza intelligences was then only a matter of time. Best oriented about the processes in your center and in detail about the group members, they also know about the growing existence of the actual value of the Sohar Center. See the last entry here, a meditation area at the Sim Ya-se Silver Star Center. But this, the actual value, means extreme danger for them because when it is completed and when it is in operation, then they have finally lost. This is precisely what they want to prevent, which is why every inconspicuous path to destruction is right for them. So they took advantage of the knowledge of the Pegasus refugees and of their equipment. A swinging wave vibrator, working on a microwave basis, thereby came to them very conveniently in order to cause damage to the actual value of the developing Sohar Center and to possibly destroy it. A Pegasus refugee, whom you have observed, investigated the data of the value, after which on August 30th around the 4th hour of the morning, the Pegasus ship was directed to the center to bring the swinging wave vibrator into action. The swinging wave bundle was placed behind the wall, which had already collapsed earlier due to a water ingress. The strong swinging waves released caused a very high vibrational wave, which within a few seconds pulled the nearly 150 centimeters thick concrete wall from its anchorage, lifted it a little, and hurled it forward, which is why it had fallen so far forward. The microwave swinging wave vibrators work with such a strong potency that in a few fractions of a second they are deadly to any form of life in such a manner that it acts like a lightning-fast aging process, which even an ignorant person could immediately detect. But this is precisely what the negative Giza intelligences cannot afford, namely, that things can be determined that point to their actual existence. If this were to happen, they would publicly expose themselves and reveal their existence, after which your explanations, which you would certainly spread, would be accepted by the Earth humans, and especially by scientists and the authorities, with the result that the Giza intelligences would be searched for, and every religion, which are their best aid for their world domination plans, would be shaken. Therefore, they must not do anything to indicate their existence, which is why they would not have done anything if any of you had watched in the vicinity of the area of value.
I understand. So the twerps will not do anything that would be inexplicable to the Earth humans, which is why everything is arranged in such a manner that it looks as if it were earthly.
That is correct.
But tell me, Quetzal, how does the crazy vibration swinging wave work?
It is a swinging wave vibrator, not a vibration swinging wave. Unfortunately, I am not allowed to explain officially how it is constructed, but you can be assured that the Earth scientists are already developing these apparatuses in their early days. These, however, are completely different in operation from those of the Pegasus refugees. They are highly transformed by a precisely tuned thought oscillation, after which they generate the necessary energy. The Giza intelligences are not able to do this, because they are not able to generate these thought impulses. Thus, they were dependent on the Pegasus refugees.
Contact Report 082.
The truth is that Margret's various seances over the last 3 months have released and radiated secrets from her subconscious by the medium that referred to the Sohar Center. These negative vibrations in this sense were located and analyzed by the Giza intelligences, who were only then informed about the emergence of the center.
Contact Report 092.
You destroyed your blockade by all your work and your burdens, which you did not realize, because your anger almost made you race and lose all control. As a result, malignant swinging waves penetrated into you, which are directed at you by directional beam devices through the Giza intelligences. The rupture of the blockade meant that these swinging waves were able to penetrate you unhindered and trigger reactions in you that are dangerous not only for yourself, but for all our tasks, because you act so unreasonably and emotionally when these swinging waves hit you that have to work destructively upon you.
Contact Report 102.
About 150 meters away, I suddenly heard the howling of a low-flying jet plane, looked around and saw a jet fighter racing up at only a low height above the ground. Only a few hundred meters before the derelict building, the Devil Bird all of a sudden shot half-diagonally into the sky, ripped over the building, and then a completely hellish crack. Like a primordial thunder, the sound shattered back over me, and then I saw, as if in slow motion, how the dilapidated house collapsed into itself, as if destroyed by a ghostly hand, while it somehow seemed to vibrate, and dust was whirled up. The tremendous thunder now on the last Saturday morning, it sounded exactly like the smashing of the sound barrier at that time, only this time it was directly above me, and thus above the roof of our house.
Manara and I were at a low altitude, directly above your actual center in a state of invisibility. Suddenly, after the first explosion in the village, a triangular ship shot in from the south, just when the second explosion took place. At a height of only about 60 meters, it hovered briefly above your house, only to shoot into the sky with triple power immediately after the third explosion in the village. I immediately realized what this meant and acted in a fraction of a second. Our ship shot forward, and the next moment, it floated directly over the fireplace of your house, less than 10 meters above the ground. Then the blow came from high above and threatened to smash our ship, which fortunately withstood the vicious force. The huge soaring, cracking sound of the breaking sound barrier fanned away from the ship and raced across the house, while the acoustic waves continued downwards in spite of everything, and hit the house as an evil force, shaking it very hard.
Then these were our dear friends, the Giza twerps, yes?
That's correct.
Did you and Manara at least this time give these lousy brothers a little lesson?
That was Manara's work. The Giza ship, a remote-controlled apparatus, the last of its kind they possessed, was completely eliminated by her after a short chase.
Aha, so you blew it out, yes? Manara, it was like that, yes. Thank you, my child, I am glad. Then we do not have to fear anything similar anymore?
Certainly, because other ships of this kind are no longer owned by the unpleasant intelligences.
Contact Report 103.
Since days already, we had to realize, unfortunately, that negative forces penetrate again with different group members, which are sent out in hateful form by the Giza intelligences. This probably because Manara and I prevented their murderous attack on your center and then destroyed their aircraft.
Contact Report 105.
But now to other and more important things that relate to you, such as the malicious attack of the Bafaths, the Giza intelligences, on you on the afternoon of March 30th. What is being done by our side is that we are considering the idea of removing the Bafath beings from the earthly system, getting hold of them, destroying their entire stations by a total elimination or restoring them to their original state, and abandoning them, deprived of any technology whatsoever, somewhere in a strange and uninhabited region of a distant galaxy, where they can live out the rest of their lives built on evil.
Contact Report 107 Plagia. Unfortunately, already for a long time, Quetzal could no longer be granted leave, and neither could all the others. The reason for this is that all were in full and constant effort, in order to remove the intelligences of Giza, who desperately made all attempts to escape us. Thus, the whole undertaking took a long time. And only on the 17th, so 4 days ago, could the last ones be captured by Quetzal and his assistants. So he is now deporting them to a very distant galaxy in the Neba system, where they can do no more harm, for there, they will have no technology and must rely on their hands, if they want to continue to live. It was simply enough, because what these malicious ones have all undertaken in recent months, in order to rid the world of you and destroy everything, was just too much.
I thought so too. But could not these heinous ones have already been deported before?
It was not our right to do that, for we have to respect the will of a life form, even if it is wrong or malicious. You know that, nevertheless. The fact that it could now come to this deportation, however, lay in a self-defense situation. The malicious and insidious attack on your residential building justified this tough course of action.
Contact Report 109.
May I still direct another question to you regarding the Giza twerps? It would interest me, and all others, what was actually done with all the underground buildings, with the equipment and the ship and the rooms, after you transported the fellows away. Are you allowed to give me information about that?
All equipment and the ship were completely eliminated by us, as well as the buildings that were erected in the rooms. The rooms themselves were then filled with solid matter, namely with rock and other matter. This was done on the technological basis of the de- and rematerialization.
Then today, practically nothing points to the former existence of these things anymore.
No, for it had to be.
I understand. But did you also fill in all the other corridors and rooms?
No, we let these remain, of course. Only everything that was necessary was destroyed.
Contact Report 174.
But then I saw it, and it was not a person with a lamp, but rather a huge mass of ionized air that looked like a luminous fog in the light of the yard lamp. But peculiarly, there were strange movements that flowed from this ionization thing, out of which an enormous hand then emerged, which moved towards the fence and appeared as if it was searching for and reaching for something. But oddly enough, it avoided the direct light of the yard lamp towards the side and towards the top, and at the same time, I realized that I was met with evil swinging waves. When Ingrid made her remark, she referred to the fact that she had been sitting with me the night before on the sofa in front of the barn, when on the upper path in the rabbit enclosure, possibly someone from your Federation materialized, who for 15 seconds was a bright green and was surrounded by a corona of blinding white light, from which a radiant red figure emerged, while all the air around ionized, and then there arose a strong smell of sulfur. This was about an hour after I had observed 2 other materializations, but which appeared red in color, near the shed during Ferdinand's night watch. But these were not seen by Ferdinand, even though he sat on the bank beneath the pulpit and actually should have seen these things. In all other respects, The whole process of the ionization of air seemed to me such that these forces cannot simply arise out of the air, but beneath the ground slope behind the trees, there probably must have been some ship from which these forces were sent up to us. This impression was reinforced in me even more after I ran out, having recognized the structure from the window, left the office, and wanted to rush to the yard lamp behind the office. As I ran around the corner of the house, I saw that the ionizing structure paused suddenly and alarmingly in its climbing hand-over-hand movements, in order to become a furiously rotating whirl within a split second, like what happens with water or with a sandstorm, whereby this rotating whirl created a compression in itself at breakneck speed, and first rushed down and then backwards towards the forest, in order to flare up brightly there, high up in the branches of the trees, and in order to disappear between the tree branches.
It was a product of the Giza intelligences, with whom we had not sufficiently considered their capabilities of consciousness, with their deportation. Very well. We had them sent to a safe place, appearing in a very remote galaxy, where they were completely isolated. But we did not take into account that they were capable of creating, as an entire block united in spirit telepathic form, a thought transmission factor of unlimited range. So they got together as an entire block, and somewhere in the universe they found a human race of negative directives that gave them a response, and which consults with the Giza intelligences using highly sophisticated spacecraft. With this space-flying race that is still unknown to us until now, a dangerous conspiracy was forged in order to make the Earth subject to the Giza intelligences once again. But how the Giza intelligences and their new co-conspirators could build up the negative forces directed against you and concentrate them to such a terrible extent is, so far, inexplicable to us. Furthermore, it is still to be said that we brought an aircraft with Giza intelligences under our control, and we now have the fallible ones in safe keeping, which is foolproof and supervised. However, the aircraft of Giza's allies withdrew using a hyperleap procedure that is not recognizable to us. So we also could not detect any structural swinging waves, neither with the entry into hyperspace nor with the exit of the craft from the same.
Contact Report 179.
We have finally succeeded in tracking down the allies of the Giza intelligences, and have succeeded in coming into possession of them and all of their technical aids. By getting a hold of the Giza allies and their technical aids, we have encountered things and realizations that make us ashamed, for we ourselves did not expect such things, and also did not consider them with our premonitions or suppositions. During the course of yesterday afternoon, on a small planet system, which we call the Charon system and which is located on the far side of the Andromeda system, one of our search units identified impulses that were identical to those which emanate from the energy bell that is roofed over you. Our unit followed these impulses to a small and very inhospitable planet, where metal domes were soon spotted, which were located in a large desert and from which the impulses were apparently being emitted. This quickly proved to be true, as defensive reactions of the dome stations appeared, which very quickly brought our unit under control and to a halt, after which the stations were then seized and the inhabitants were arrested. But it turned out that it was another faction of the Giza intelligences, who had to leave the Earth at a very early stage and who had formed a separate people, whom they call Saban. As it turned out, these folk have always been in constant touch with the real Giza intelligences remaining on the Earth. So it was easy for them and their allies to get in touch after the deportation through us, through a consciousness block, after which the Sabans then helpfully stepped in and gave the Giza intelligences every aid, while they themselves also actively cooperated and even pursued the same objectives since ancient times. In addition, They had not remained idle over many centuries, but they developed malignant technologies that enabled them for several months to send out, across millions of light years, negative swinging waves that were polarized toward the smallest targets, which exhibit the characteristic that they take the available negative swinging waves of the same kind from the target and concentrate them into an immense ball of power, without the originators of the swinging waves noticing a reduction in their strength, and without the originators of the swinging waves losing anything of their own swinging waves.
Ah, I understand. Then the negative swinging waves of the believers, sectarians, and religious fanatics, etc., are probably those which are taken and concentrated into an enormous and destructive ball of power, right?
That is of correctness, but that is not enough because as a result of the acquired technology, the Sabins have succeeded in having their swinging waves affect targets, located millions of light years away in such a concentrated manner and exactly to the millimeter, such that they could locate and hit a fly on the Earth from their impulse location in the Charon system. Taking advantage of these, they attacked those group members, who are still, in certain parts, dependent on faith and who indulge in unrealities and in uncontrolled emotions, etc., whereby these ones increasingly thought and acted illogically and improperly. But now, that should not and cannot be an excuse for the misconduct of the fallible ones, because already, long ago, they should have overcome the conditions of such degeneration and instability, so that they could not be attacked by and could not be influenced by such powers any more. However, these fallible ones are not the only ones who were directly impacted by these Giza impulses, because the same thing also happened with many other human beings of the earth, who have been in contact with you within a nearer or further framework, since the days when Simyase first made contact with you. It is just that previously, we knew nothing about all this, so we could do nothing about it. We also lacked the knowledge that several centuries ago, a Giza group had isolated itself and had departed from the earth in order to form their own new nation, which continued working nevertheless within the old framework and with the same goals, far from the earth and in constant connection with the remaining Giza intelligences. Only now has all of this become clear and perceptible to us, after we have apprehended the criminal elements of whose existence we had no knowledge.
Contact Report 180.
The annoying concerns surrounding the Giza intelligences are finally settled, according to which we are now only dealing with the analyses of the discovered and seized material. However, this will take several years to complete, as I have already explained to you earlier.
Contact Report 215.
What was it with Sodom and Gomorrah? What actually happened there? How were these two cities destroyed?
Several factors are to be mentioned. On the one hand, a meteorite fell to the earth and exploded high over the area of the two cities, which would now actually be designated as larger villages. This led to devastating destruction of both cities, triggering a massive earthquake, by which the earth was torn open, like in Petra, and by underground volcanic activity. Small and larger chunks of sulfur were flung high and across the country, which also naturally caused much disaster, and by this, as also by the exploding meteorite, many human beings were killed. The remaining part of the total destruction was caused by the megalomaniac and crazy god of the Hebrews, an extraterrestrial who had his headquarters deep under the pyramid of Giza. His punishment for the disobedience of the population of Sodom and Gomorrah against his commands was that he let two small atom bombs ignite over the two cities, which finally leveled everything to the ground, killing all humans and animals.
Contact Report 264.
Several times your own films, which you gave to the photographer Schmid during the first time of your contacts to develop and to make pictures, were replaced by completely new and faked films. Consequently, you already received many false negatives and photos from the very beginning, or even faked pictures. This also happened with the film on which you captured Asket and Nera, and which you only got back months later, and which was in fact a product of the black men who had found and photographed Asket's and Nera's doubles in America, after which the pictures were edited and handed over to you by Schmid. It was precisely with regard to these pictures that we found out that Schmid immediately handed over the film handed over to him in this respect to the black men, or to the men in black, as they are called in your ufological circles, as the case may be, who within just a few days were able to locate and photograph the Asket-Nera doppelgangers in America several times, so that the two pictures known to you were created and handed over to you. The Giza intelligences also played a certain role in the whole thing, as well as on other occasions, as you know very well. But we were not able to clarify the exact connections. It is clear, however, that they had an impulse telepathic negative influence on a large number of people on Earth to damage, defame, or even kill you, as has been attempted several times. Unsuccessfully, fortunately. And in the end, everything was done to make you and your mission impossible, especially by accusing you of cheating on photo forgeries. And both the men in black still work today, as do the decades-long impulse telepathic negative machinations against you and your mission to be destroyed. And affected by these impulses of the Giza, intelligences should be all those who work full of intrigues, slander, and other negative machinations against you and the mission without having knowledge of the impulses.
Not exactly pleasing. But how long will these Giza impulses continue to be effective on Earth?
This may take another 200 or 300 years.
Actually, I feel sorry for the schemers and slanderers, because if they are blinded by the impulse telepathic machinations of the Giza intelligences, there is hardly any hope for them that they will ever come to reason and truth in this life. Consequently, they are more and more mistaken. By the way, you have sent these Giza twerps elsewhere. Is it really the case that they cannot get back to Earth from there, or cannot make contact with other intelligences to influence them and cause new harm?
The Earth humans can be sure that they will never again be bothered by these degenerates. Other intelligences are also safe from them. And these enemies against you and your mission, that is beyond doubt for us, are all purely Earth-human persons who are under the influence of the Giza impulses, which are still effective for a long time.
So also Kalkorfen B?
Without any doubt. Nevertheless, it must be said that the dangerous telepathic impulses of the men in black, as well as the impulses of the deported Giza intelligences that will remain effective for a long time to come, must not be regarded as harmless.
Contact Report 424.
As to the Giza intelligences and the Syrian black men, that is another matter which leads back many thousands of years. Whereas the Brazilian group consisted of former Nazis who were able to take over an object of the Giza intelligences, what we also were able to find out. This group does not exist anymore today, and the Giza intelligences were sent into exile and are becoming extinct. Some others, such as Dan Fry and Schmidt, etc., were by the Giza intelligences, through means of teleprojection, put into pseudo-realities with visionary experiences which they deemed to be reality.
Contact Report 452.
Firstly, I would like to question you regarding the deportees, the Giza twerps, and the Pegasus refugees. In the 81st contact on the 4th of September 1977, Quetzal said the following, thereto now the question. At that time it happened that the Pegasus refugees attempted to cause severe damage to us in the center. How does it now make sense? However, their appearance on the Earth thus, since you have recently said, anyway, that through your clarifications you have determined that during the last 300 years there have been no other Earth foreigners other than those which you mentioned to me. However, what was it then with the Syrians and Ashtar Sharan and gangs?
We were only later able to clarify the facts about the Pegasus refugees when the whole story about the Giza intelligences clarified. The refugees belonged to a splinter group of the Giza intelligences, who lived in the space-time displaced region of the Pegasus constellation and who had entered an alliance with the faction living on the Earth. Therefore, they were counted as one of the Giza intelligences and consequently were not described as special foreigners. Therefore, also today we do not refer to these as special foreigners, which also applies to the Syrian fanatics and the faction of Ashtar Sharan, who for a very long time on the Earth tried to cause mischief again and again and also were in alliance with the Giza intelligences. All factions of the Giza intelligences consisted of escaped criminals, delinquents, and power addicts, who practically in every connection with the Giza intelligences were willing with reference to their machinations and acted according to their plans. Definite knowledge with respect to all of these connections of the Giza intelligences and all of their factions, however, we first received when we could establish contact with the scientists of the Syrians, whereby also the fanatical small group who were fundamentally responsible for the murder attempts on you could then be eliminated by Syrian forces. Then it was also this small fanatical group with few members who reported in detail about all of the connections before they were sent into exile.
Oh, so, then the Syrians therefore were active on the Earth for a long time. It is to be probably assumed, however, that they were not from the beginning allies of the Giza intelligences, while however the Giza twerps and the Pegasus refugees apparently already from the beginning belonged together. But why were they then refugees?
They had to escape, because they also caused mischief on the world where they lived and were pursued by security forces of their home world. Yet it was, however, some other Earth-foreign fraternized factions, who were part of the Giza intelligences, who were in contact with these and had their bases with them. We do not consider these also one of the Earth foreigners, of course, that I mentioned to you. Still, you are mistaken respecting the Syrian men in black, because these also formed links with the Giza intelligences from the beginning, also like the faction of Ashtar Sharan. The Giza intelligences controlled all approaches to the earthly airspace for millennia, and forced all those, who they could use for themselves, into the alliance through despotism and a forcible change of power of judgment and attitude. Since, however, you have never asked and apparently were also not therein interested regarding these connections, we also have never spoken about it.
I understand a brainwashing that comes about by a forcible change of the power of judgment and attitude of the human being through strong psychic and physical pressure, in which also drugs and electromagnetic, electric, and mechanical torture are often applied.
This corresponds to the meaning of my words.
Then, that now is finally clear. The connections with the Giza honchos and other extraterrestrials are therefore much trickier and more extensive, as you told me. But even so, I also have never asked about it. Consequently, you also have told me nothing about the details. Then, however, I have a problem again, and in fact with the extraterrestrial aircraft that the Brazilian group had, from which I was set about in the year 1976 in Winkelried near Wetzikon. You told me at that time, which unfortunately was not recorded in any contact report, that it concerned a beamship, which indeed was piloted by people from a distant galaxy, and in fact, with poison gas breathers or such, that they, however, were members of your Federation, if I am not mistaken. With the 65th contact on the 23rd of October 1976, you said the following.
Further also, I was able to clarify the events in the Winkelried near Wetzikon, near your domicile. So in addition also, the existence of that track of a beam ship, which was not from one of our beam ships. With the track discovered by you, it concerns a ship of the Brazilian private interest group, who had sent out a command for the most exact probe of your circumstances. In accordance with my investigations, it was about 5 people who checked everything very accurately. The ship doesn't even represent a product of the power group itself, but loot. It was stolen from a crew from a distant galaxy who landed in Brazil years ago, who had to make a forced landing because of some damage. The interstellar drive of the ship was completely destroyed and cannot be repaired again, at least not by the technicians of this power group. Only the planetary anti-gravity drive is fully functional, which is suffice for planetary flights. However, you saw the same ship weeks later in the Winkelried, where you, on your very irrational search for this, for you, mysterious object, also discovered this, which put you very much in danger. 2 men were in the terrain out there and observed your arrival, which was an easy game for them, because at the time they observed you constantly. In the desire to kill you, they prepared everything and steered you to the place of the planned event. It was your luck that you drove in your vehicle with caution and without lights on that dark night, because it was only through this that you were not exactly recognizable in the darkness that the shot from the gun missed you. Unfortunately, you are mistaken, dear friend, because the strangers were not members of our Federation, but they belonged to another group of the Giza intelligences and were stationed also with these, whereby they had to make an emergency landing in Brazil at that time and were captured by the Brazilian group. Actually, they were poison gas breathers who all died when their respiration equipment failed. They could not leave the Earth anymore, because their interstellar drive was completely destroyed, which was a work of the Giza intelligences, as we found by experience through the members of the Syrian group. The reason for the destruction of the drive was so that they could not flee, because the Giza intelligences had a change in fundamental attitude.
And the Giza twerps didn't undertake anything, as the ship had to make an emergency landing in Brazil, and the respiration equipment failed, so also nothing, since the old Nazis of the Brazilian group captured the ship.
Their nature and behavior was that they simply gave up lost aircraft, as also they were not concerned about missing people, etc. either. Furthermore, they were on close terms with the Brazilian group, which, however, that already for a long time does not exist anymore, because everyone of the faction has died by now because of aging and illness.
All members of this group were former officers of the German Empire who escaped from Germany to Brazil. They were mainly leading lights and henchmen of the Nazi Empire and therefore escaped war criminals.
This was actually the case.
Contact Report 457.
And what is currently in the earthly airspace, apart from us who are Earth foreigners, are those 3 groups of which we have spoken several times during the last months. However, we should also mention those strangers who have been in contact with the intelligences of Giza since ancient times, and who came to Earth from distant worlds. These, however, we do not count among the usual very rare Earth foreigners who came or are coming to Earth.
Contact Report 710.
Then, I want to end this subject and hear from you what you have to say about the matter of the Giza intelligences, who were in reality the Earth foreigners, of whom there has been talk since time immemorial.
But the threat of the secret agents and dark figures had to be prevented, which could only be done by deliberate misleading, and this also with regard to the Fatima event, which we misleadingly called the machination of the Giza intelligences instead of the Earth foreigners when it came up in our conversations. In fact, the Giza intelligences were also Earth foreigners whom we actually deported, but who were just as unknown to the Earth foreigners as we were to them. Like us, the Giza intelligences also had similar devices for complete shielding, so that they too could not be located by the Earth foreigners and could also not be perceived in any other way. Consequently, they also knew nothing about their presence on Earth and were therefore simply non-existent for the Earth foreigners. So, confusing as it all may seem, we had to put the Giza intelligences in the foreground, which, according to our providential plan and hope, obviously appeared to be a fantasy product of your statements by the Earth foreigners, the secret services and black men, as well as our contacts and conversations. This only furthered the controversy, which, however, helped the fulfillment of our plans. Because the interest of the Earth foreigners, secret services, and black men quickly waned, and you were left alone by them, which has since been maintained in your favor.
Contact Report 724.
Ashtashran, like the Giza intelligences, also belonged to the old split-off old Pleiadian splinter group, which had already departed to our Dern universe more than 22 million years ago and was up to mischief in it. In particular, the Giza intelligences were in some respects malevolent elements, while Ashtashran was also evil in other ways, spreading an impulse-driven delusion of belief about his person among the Earthlings. Now, just as you Pleiaren of today exercise caution and secrecy towards the strangers on Earth, these two groups were also careful never to make themselves known to the strangers, which they have succeeded in doing extensively and without any problems throughout the ages, so that the strangers still do not know of their former existence, just as they do not know of yours. And the trick of the two groups, the Ashtashran alias Ashtar Sharan and the Giza intelligences, was that they were only in our presence when they caused mischief, whereas they were resident in another space-time plane and only came into our presence temporarily and unnoticed by the strangers. So that is one thing, while on the other hand your Pleiaren existence must now also be addressed, for which a few things need to be explained. Firstly, as far as I know, the strangers on Earth have never been able to ascertain the existence of the Giza intelligences themselves, but have at most heard of them and, as a result, even assumed, because they themselves could not perceive them. Because the Gizayers, according to their old Pleiaren technique, were able to shield themselves against any locating etc., as you Pleiaren are also wont to do today, that the speeches would only correspond to suppositions or a fib. And as far as Ashtashran alias Ashtar Sharan is concerned, as far as I know he was never in our presence anyway, but worked on his confused believers on Earth from another space-time plane.
Contact Report 797 in note. It is not clear to me whether or not the Umigos mentioned in this contact report are the same as the Giza intelligences of Bafath, or another group of aliens who also set up their headquarters deep under the main pyramid at Giza in Egypt.
The whole of the lowliness against you goes back to your childhood, because a woman hated you, because you told her your opinion about religion and faith when you were a boy. However, this woman was a fanatically strict believer and belonged to a faith community to which she complained about you. Consequently, some lengthy consultations took place, and then attempts were made to win you as a member of this community. The smaller group somehow came into contact with beings that were alien and called themselves Umigos, although it is not yet clear how this was possible. These alien beings were originally also fanatical believers in an all-creating higher might, which they called Selidin and worshipped. In the course of time, however, they fell away from this erroneous belief and turned to Christianity and sought like-minded people far and wide, which they also found in your hometown, among others. But how the connection with the woman came about, who became the actual origin of your lifelong embrace, has not yet been clarified. These Umigos were vicious and fanatically hostile to everything that did not correspond to their views and their faith, Therefore, they tried to secretly undermine the faith of all human beings, which was different and strange to them. This was done imperceptibly in such a way that with the help of their devices brought from their homeland, they influenced almost all believers, with unnameable exceptions, of the earthly religions worldwide through their electronic microtechnology, which was still absolutely unknown on Earth at that time, and its possibilities in such a way that they gradually lost control over their own thinking and became largely incapable of thinking for themselves and also unstable. Furthermore, they influenced the believers in such a way that they fell prey to malice and bloodlust, whereby they created enmities again and again, which led to evil wars, to religious murder, and all imaginable evil. In the course of time, however, it came to pass that the Umigos, through the influences of the Earth humans' faith in Christianity, became doubtful of their higher might, ultimately repugnant and apostate from it, consequently becoming more and more foreign to their faith, which ultimately led them gradually to turn to the earthly religion of Christianity and to acknowledge the God of that creed. Something that also happens today with Earth humans, who are lulled by religious platitudes, or who very quickly change their faith through coercion or benefit and become believers in another religion. With the Umigos, however, it was a lengthy process that took a long time. But when Christianity began to spread, they finally turned to it and stuck to it. How the Umigos came into contact with the woman and this religious community in your hometown has not yet been investigated by Arleon and his followers, to which he also said that this was not really important, because the only thing that was important was what resulted from it, and that was what haunted you throughout your life. Just now I was talking about this woman being a strict believer, regarding the Christian faith, yet she was as vicious in her disposition as the Umigos, who had set up their headquarters deep under the main pyramid at Giza in Egypt.
Something dawns on me, namely the Giza Heinis, who were then caught and deported by the Pleiaren. Am I right?
Yes, they were, a splintered group of a criminal tribe of our Federation that found passage into this universe and likewise to Earth, because they had our through.
Because they must have been secretly following the Pleiaren when they came to Earth to join us. Bermunda, that's about the way it was, isn't it?
Yes, that is how it was, as I have been oriented in that regard.
Horat was her name, but I do not know exactly how her name is spelt correctly, just whether this name has an additional H or not. I also want to mention that the majority of all believers are probably deeply unbalanced in their character and in such a way that all evil immediately breaks through to the outside, and these human beings quickly become active in the respective form, up to and including hatred and killing, etc.
What the additional H concerns is not important. But what you are saying with regard to the evil deep in one's character, that is undeniable. Now, Arleon related that there were 11 other persons, men and women, with this numerous faith community who revealed a nature that was strictly devout, but like the woman, they were also evil, but maintained good relations with some of the local government, specifically 2 men named, and who had intimate relations with the woman, although all 3 were married. This woman also had an intimate relationship with your teacher with whom you spent 1 year in year 4, who often beat you mercilessly in front of all the students and—
I remember that. And furthermore, I once saw him and the woman you are talking about on the so-called Volbers when they—
That will not have pleased them both, but let me report further. Arleon explained that the woman and the other 11 persons hated you and wished you to die, which of course did not come to pass, so it was arranged that very evil was done to you and that you were shouted down. Intrigues were devised and carried out against you with the help of the community officials and the police, with teachers also helping. But they honestly supported you, but they were forced to
howl with the wolves, otherwise they would have been out of a job, like Teacher Lehman, I know, because he told me himself.
Yes, that's how it was, but I do not have to tell you about that, because you know yourself what happened and how you coped and managed everything. But Arlian said that in the whole affair the Umigos were very much involved. So in their wickedness and Christian fanaticism, they did much to harm you how and where they could. They succeeded very well with the help of the influenced members of the local government, but your will to resist was stronger than their intrigues and all the malice that was shown to you. Besides, I must also mention, the Amigos used 2 of their 5 devices, which they possessed and handed over to the woman, to maliciously influence many human beings in your hometown. These devices, powered by electrical energy, produced an electronic micro-vibration that could be widely broadcast and adjusted to certain human beings. One of the devices was given in 1948 by a man of the 11 group, namely, to an American friend whom he did not know, belonged to the dark government of America. Since then, the latter have been using the virtually indestructible device to this day to influence or even kill certain persons according to their will and benefit. The Umigos brought these devices with them from their homeland, and they are constructed of metal unknown on Earth, which the experts of the dark government have not yet been able to analyze. The devices can be used in many ways, for example to induce hallucinations in human beings that seem so real that the people concerned firmly believe that what has happened to them is real. This happened, for example, with Simyase and other persons in your workroom, as Arlian explained. They also have many other efficacies, one of which is how they are used to attack your electronic devices and negatively affect your work and damage everything when you work with them. The emanations of the electronic microwaves also work in other ways, such as how you described to me the strange occurrence that happened in the kitchen of the center. But in another way, the second device was used by the group in your hometown to influence various persons in such a way that they did everything that was harmful to you, which ultimately led to you being taken everywhere and harassed. You, however, did not let yourself be influenced and always remained yourself, as you had learned from Bafath to defend yourself against foreign swinging waves of various kinds, and to simply neutralize them. This is the reason why you were never affected by malicious swinging waves, and consequently all attacks of any kind against you were ineffective. However, it is different with regard to the electronic devices and other materials that you have to handle for your work, for these naturally react to the negative influences that are directed towards them. Consequently, they no longer work correctly for you when you work with them, while other persons can use the same devices without any problems. How it works in this way is because all the swinging waves are aligned with your personality, but are deflected by your defenses and transferred to the equipment or material you are working with. When the last 3 of the first adversaries died of old age, and then also 2 of the descendants, so that today there are only 7 persons left, 2 of whom, however, are struggling with death because they are afflicted with the corona plague. The 3 of them, who have extraordinarily good knowledge and abilities concerning electronics, took out again the futuristic device that had been stored for a long time for them, which at that time the woman had received from the Umigos, and with which various persons had been influenced, and made it functional in order to harm you. The Umigos could no longer be asked because they were deported, and so the descendants worked so persistently on the futuristic device until it became functional again, and they found out how they could use it. Since then it has been used to do you such harm that you should get into trouble with the human beings, and in such a way that it is very difficult for you to prove that the incidents that occur are not of your making. This already started when you returned to Switzerland in 1969, and since then there have been repeated attempts to deprive you of your life, which even tried to do. It has happened 24 times so far, but every single attempt on your life failed as a result of inexplicable providence.
Contact Report 838.
It is very interesting that the foreigners did not even know, as you say, that the Giza twerps had been on Earth for a long time and were up to their mischief.
Contact Report 864.
Well, what the foreigners know about it, I don't know, but Ptah told me that they know about it. But they are not supposed to know anything about the Giza intelligences, because these have always remained hidden from the foreigners, because they have kept back from them, just like the Pleiaren. Furthermore, what I also recently learned from Ta, they were from the Ankar universe and came from there to Earth. This because they destroyed their home planet themselves in their evilness, which is why they came here by the old route. Meanwhile, since being taken away and brought back, they are free but inaccessible to flight technology on a world of the Pleiaren Federation and under constant supervision. Consequently, they can do no more harm. Ptah explained that their viciousness has not diminished. Consequently, they are still of the same mind as before.
I am aware of everything in this regard.
I think so, for it was a Pleiaren action when these heinies were taken away, which also the foreigners could not perceive, as Ptah said. Consequently, they never knew anything about you Pleiaren, and also about the heinies in Giza and their evil machinations.